Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We're really excited about today. We're going to do something different for us. We have somebody, a guest with us today. So a little more about her in a second, but what is Conversations in Mind? It is a conversation about the study and demystification of new thought, a dive into the science and soul of consciousness, and the question always of what if your mind is more than a collection of thoughts and if it is a gateway to a whole new way of living. I am Reverend Barb. I'm joined by my friend and fellow minister, Mark Gilbert. And we are joined today by Darlene Green, who is the author of a series of books called In Service to Love. I have one of them, and about to launch the fourth one, which has gotten the attention of Dr. Irvin Laszlo, and I'm thinking that we're getting Darlene pre-fame. So what she says about herself is that a 40-year spiritual quest fueled by an inner calling and a lifetime of mystical experiences culminated in an invitation by the divine fields, source ascended masters, to write with them. The resulting body of work addresses the how of navigating the shift in consciousness as we enter a new paradigm, which is, of course, why we thought, since we're talking about consciousness all the time, she would be a really great guest. I had the pleasure of meeting her in Washington a few weeks back and became enamored, very enamored. And we had a little love affair for a weekend at a retreat where we just mostly laughed. But mostly I was called to invite Darlene because she is the most grounded, centered, and actually real person I've ever met doing the work of channeling and being that connected to source energy. So it was really up-leveling to be around you over those few days, and it's made an impact in my life since I got back. So I appreciate you greatly. So we're just going to talk today about where do we think consciousness is evolving to, and what are we doing on this planet right now, and how does that all lend to it? So
it's kind of like, what part of the elephant do you want to start on?
Right? Which piece shall we tackle first? Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit for a second about your work, though?
Sure. I would love to. There's a lot, and again, I can.
Because we do want to talk mostly about consciousness.
Distilling all of it is a little challenging. So, interesting thing is that Irvin Laszlo. I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to kind of come back around. Irvin Laszlo wrote the foreword to my new book, which is titled "Love Speaks Always." The topic of the whole body of work that I have written is consciousness and how it is that humanity moves through this next stage of consciousness into the new paradigm. The way that this work came to me was through my own sacred quest. Very early in life, I am very, very sensitive, seeing and hearing more than most people do. And that really fueled a decades-long spiritual quest until one of the most profound moments in 2017, I was met by the Ascended Masters and Divine Fields and invited to write with them. Let me tell you what, that was a good journaling day. Whoa. And so the whole body of work has been about the construct of consciousness. And so it's interesting to have like this dichotomy where the way the work is received is so ethereal and esoteric, yet the topic And the writing is so very like manageable, like you can get your head around it. And so that really is the purpose of, and what I see is like my lane in doing this work. So am I channeling? Yeah. I'm a scribe. Yeah. I'm a student. Definitely. And so this whole body of work has been an absolutely fascinating process. And I have come back around to the place where, surprise of all surprises, that all of this had to do with physics, that even the parts that we consider to be the most mysterious around enlightenment and around the movement of consciousness and expanding into the next paradigm, it lives in the realm of unknown, which is part of its definition, actually. So it's fascinating that it came around to, over these 8 years, I've come to this place of, oh my goodness, it's all physics. Now I get it. Even my capacity to reach the realms that I do, it's like, it's physics.
Well, that's simple. There we go.
There you go.
There you go.
So what's our question today? What are we really, I hear you saying we're talking about how do we see consciousness evolving?
How do we see it evolving, and how do we see it rising, and how do and I guess my quest these days is really like staying in a place of belief, of faith, trust, and pixie dust, call it, of that this is all happening now, and that is why some of the chaos now, because change always requires some chaos in the human experience. And then what are we evolving to,
Yeah.
And what would that look like? And you and I've talked about this a little bit, like what's the vision on the other side of this? And
right.
Yeah.
So, focusing on that question, and I would invite the listeners to think about what they think about it as well. But Darlene, we're happy to have you with us today. So maybe why don't you kick us off with that question, and from your perspective and the work that you've gotten, what would be your take on where you see consciousness evolving, and where are we headed?
Well, I think that the key word here is evolution. And when you take a look back, there is nothing that stays still. Humanity has always evolved. And what that means is that there is a continual revealing of new ground, always. And from my perspective, I see that we are shifting from a background of separation consciousness, where we can witness the division and opposition and separation, and we are moving into a new paradigm of unity consciousness. And so right now we're residing at that moment where it's neither an ebb tide or a flow tide. We are right in the middle where we're transitioning from one to another. And I think it's from separation consciousness to a state of unity consciousness, which from my perspective, and there's a lot of stories around this, is the experience of connecting not only, with my humanity, but me connecting with my divine nature and the wisdom that is innate for each one of us. And then as we bring that to this planet, we are automatically sourced by love, and we increase the frequency of the planet and of ourselves. And this is how I see that we birth into a new realm. That was kind of a big chunk right there.
What you're getting at is something I think Barb and I have talked about in some prior episodes, and the fact that humanity seems to be going through a monumental leap that is accompanying a breakdown that is leading us to a breakthrough. That there is this aspect of us where we have lived and evolved through levels of a sense of separation, that we focused on the fact that we're different and apart from one another. And we're now coming through larger numbers of individualized aspects of the one to recognize that, no, we're not separate, that although we're moving through a sense of separation, we're actually moving towards a remembrance of our true unity. And so this shift from focusing on the divisiveness to moving to a focus on the unity comes with a little bit of a shakeup of humanity. And a lot of the things we see going on the planet right now might be representative of that, the pain that we sometimes go in any kind of monumental shift. And that's what we're, to a degree, are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and don't you think too? So I was thinking about this earlier. Like a lot of what's happening seems like the holding on desperately to the familiar, and uncovering some more junk in the familiar, maybe to help people let it go. I don't know, but I think that there's a lot of people really holding on tight to what their current paradigm is, what their call it Christian paradigm is, probably other faith traditions as well. They're very rules based and very structured, because this shift feels to me like it creates a less structure and a lot more connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we bring those people along? How do we get to people who are wanting so desperately to hold on to what is?
From my perspective, first of all, that's very painful. That's a very painful stance. So first of all, compassion. It's hard being in a growth cycle. And this is where I see there is a lot of pain and a lot of struggle that's happening right now. And I consider this to be, it's kind of like going through like a puberty, going through total, that is not a good
total hormone raging, right?
Well, but it's human nature. There's a distinction that came up in my body of work that is the distinction between our human nature and our divine nature. And our human nature has the natural, is naturally directed toward familiarity, comfort, being right, having the definitions be around us that somehow create an experience of security. And staying in a known world holds like survival level energy to it. And so this is a lot of what I see happening. But when the natural flow of evolution, the natural flow of growing and expanding is in an opposite direction, there's an immediate friction. And when we hold on to what it is that we think we know. And I think that is a very powerful awareness that where, like for me in my process, my continual prayer is what may I release now that no longer serves me? And growing is always about moving into an unknown realm. And there's a huge amount of faith and trust that we've got this. But with every other type of developmental stage we've gone through in life, we've always had what it takes to make that to make that leap, to move into that unknown stage. We've always had what it takes. But it requires something of us. Like riding your bike took something. Learning how to walk takes something. It requires us. And I think that there's another stage of humanity's opportunity to grow up.
Yeah.
Basically.
One of those things I think is interesting when you're looking at people who maybe you think are trying to make the leap and feel that resistance within them is to have compassion for them, to recognize they're at their own unique step in the journey, that we're not all at the same level. There are people who are further ahead of us. There are people who are quote unquote behind us, but that's not a judgment to divide us from them. It's to look out and just see of this massive individualized expressions of the one. We're all one, and we're all growing and evolving at our own level. So somebody who is coming out of, who is in New Thought may be more open to the concepts that we're talking about here, whereas somebody who may be coming out of a traditional religious path may feel a little more challenged by it. But that doesn't mean that that there's anything wrong with them or that we need to judge them in any way. It's a matter of really just recognizing they are where they are. And if we had lived their lives, we'd be where they are. There's a model many years ago that I remember that's always helped me in looking at the mass evolution. It's like everybody has their own perspective on life, and sometimes if you take a bell curve, but you make it like a slow moving slug, and there's the front edge of the slug moving towards the future, and then there's the tail end that's also a big hump back here of people who are somewhat resistant because we're very comfortable in our lives and how they are, and to some degree we all resist change in some form or fashion in our lives. Yet we're also pushed along. We're also being pushed by life and by others and by the very nature of the divine in us to move towards that growing edge. But we're all at our own unique spots in that slow moving snail of life forward. And but if we can look at it that way, well, I'm somewhere in that. And and when I look at people and say, well, they're not where I am, I have to let go of that and recognize that any kind of thought that is judging them as being less than or different from me because they're at a different perspective on the journey is a divisive comment. It's putting a duality where there's really unity. And I need to let go of that thought and just have compassion and recognize that somebody ahead of me is looking back at me, and they're wanting, hopefully they're wanting for me the best for me to move to the highest calling of myself. And that's the desire I want for anyone else. I want everybody to find their own unique gifts and talents, express them, and have a life of joy and happiness, and live the best life and grow to what they're supposed to grow in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let I get rid of this slimy feeling that you've created for me. So thank you very much. Appreciate that so much.
You're welcome.
So I keep getting this visual. This is, and I know that this is just completely out of whack, right? But I do. I keep getting this visual of like all of us around the entire planet, like everyone waking up on one day, and we're all like walking like 2 inches off the ground, and that somehow there is that it feels safe to everyone, and that creates the question: what is happening, and what could be happening differently? Like the awe of that does not get lost. And like that somehow there's a moment, a collective moment of awe that moves us all forward at the same time. And that doesn't mean, that still means I'm sure that we're in different places in the slime or the slug or whatever. Oh God, you need another picture for that. I'm just going to say, slugs. But, we'll all still be in different places in it. We won't be the same, but that somehow that transformational moment opens a door to looking at everything differently all at once. And that, and like we talked about for our last week's show, like how could that move us from a place of transactional thinking and transactional being to transformational thinking and transformational being with one another?
Well, I want to get Darlene in here on this one, but I want to quickly just say that when we step outside of time and duality and the human experience, that we all are already there already. It's only when we go back into the experience of the division of moving through time that we think that we're at different stages and levels. But to the degree that we can become aware of the non-dual nature of all that exist, and that we exist in a process or experience outside of time, we'd recognize we're all there already. So we do have what you're calling us to.
I want that to happen so that like our kids, grandkids, nieces, whatever, are having a more joyful life because of it. And
there's another question I want to bring up or bring into the conversation, but I want to get Darlene on it.
Yeah, Darlene, please.
I think that we all move in our perfect timing, that it's kind of like popcorn popping, and we all move when it's appropriate for us to do that. And I think that the initial indicators are beginning to look where I haven't looked before. So, for example, it's like when somebody starts to ask the questions, who am I and why am I here? What happens there is it opens up the door to a new level of possibility that was not there when I was when I'm holding the stance of I know everything about my life and I've got my world mastered here, right? It's like that foot in the door of asking. And this is why curiosity is so important in the whole process. And then there's one other major distinction that was delivered to me through the writing, through the ascended master. So I'm here at my desk, and they're telling me, because you can see their wings back here, but they're telling me, you have no idea who you are. You don't know who you are. Who you are is source. You are source in form. Meet us halfway. Meet us. So what they're telling me is that I am not a mere mortal, that who I am is love itself. Now, let me tell you what, that was one big pill to swallow, like all at one time. And even as I am sitting and I'm listening, because I hear and I listen, and I'm at my computer and I'm hearing them, I'm pushing back. I'm talking to the archangel sitting next to me. And it's like, hey, I don't know. That sounds a little audacious to me.
That's a lot to take on. Thanks.
I don't know. I mean, I'm talking to the archangel saying, wait a minute here. But what they did is they kept on holding this space for me with extraordinary patience. So what they said was, meet us eye to eye, peer to peer, and divine to divine. And again, it's like, I don't know about that. But what they did is that when I would be looking at them, and I would be, because they were always on my right-hand side, still are, but what they would say to me is, or my prayer began to be, I'm feeling the energy and the emotion around this right now, show me how you see me. And as I had that prayer, what happened over a period of time, given the space and the energetic that is held in this body of work, is that what happened was that they were holding a mirror to me. Basically, as I looked at them, they were holding a mirror to me. And they would say, behold the face of God. That's a lot. However, as the work progressed, there was this invitation to the next stage of wholeness. And this is where Ervin Laszlo's work, one space where Ervin Laszlo's work and my work meets, which is the evolutionary pull is natural to all creation. And the evolutionary pull is toward the next greater state of wholeness. So from my mind, as I'm writing and experiencing this as a student and being encouraged to move to my next steps, what I felt was that I really had to sit with, who am I? And as I begin to realize who I am is the divine, who I am is source in form. And it's interesting how that thought, even with Ernest Holmes, that thought of you are the divine moves in, as, and through you. I'm talking about the as part. Let's focus in on the as part, the divine as me. And I believe that as we move for that, as we reach into that, reaching beyond the world that I know, and being curious and being courageous about moving into the unknown, and I begin to have these inner messages and these inner thoughts that reflect back to me a truth. And when these truths land, they have a deep, deep resonance. It's this calling back of home. And all of a sudden, what disappears are the tethers and the definitions and the boundaries that I had perceived as safety. All of a sudden, they become a platform for something new.
Darlene, when I hear your description there, it reminds me of the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, who also resonates with the perennial philosophy as put out by Aldous Huxley. And I say all this because I know some people, when they hear ascended masters or archangels, sometimes I know there are some people who have a little bit of difficulty with that kind of language. And sometimes I think it's what we can look at is that there's different words we can use to get at the same thing, that all of the essential mystical teachings of the ages, no matter which we've come back through most channeled work, most of the esoteric teachings of most of the major faiths, involve an aspect of us remembering the truth that we are divine beings, that we are spiritual beings, that we're spiritual beings having this human experience. And so when we talk about the evolution of consciousness, we're talking about the consciousness and the recognition of that consciousness and our labeling and ideas around what our consciousness is as we move through the human experience. But every mystical state, every channeled information, archangel information, Holmes' writings, and the words of Ramana Maharshi, who used to say self-inquiry was to look in and go, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And the continuous questioning of what he called self-inquiry with who am I was to get at an aspect of letting go of the identification with your being of this physical world and recognizing that your real truth is this inner divine nature that is in you that's separate from. And the key then is to also then come back into the material world with that recognition and live a life from a sense of unity and knowing that your truth is that divine nature. So, to people who are listening to this, I would, I would shout from the rooftop that to the degree that you can open yourself, that no matter how the words are coming to you, no matter what the message is, it's always a reminder of that divine truth that's in us, and to hold that mirror up and ask that question of who you are. And when you do, you find that you really are a divine being, that everyone is, and that we are all divine beings, and that there is no divisiveness or differences between us. We are all unified in that. We act in different ways because we're not uniform in our experience of human life, but we're all unified in our spiritual nature as one. So.
And I think you just described the new paradigm. That is that state of the new paradigm that we're moving into as I see it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that is the new paradigm. Is I think that, involution embedded the divine into every aspect of the one, and then evolution is bringing us back to remembering the truth. That we are having to go through a human experience of thinking that we're separate and apart from one another. And we're doing that in our own individual ways, and we're at different steps on the path. But ultimately, we're all headed back to that. And if we can step outside of the human experience, back to the spiritual realm, back to the absolute, or could see things from a spiritual perspective, which is how Holmes put it in the textbook, that we could see that we are all one. But we have to. It's like shifting a perspective from I'm looking at life through as Mark's eyes. And Barb and Darlene are looking at life through theirs. And we have to sort of shift our perspective to see through greater and greater perspectives and higher perspectives, so that we're not looking and seeing things as me, this individual, but to seeing life as the unified one. And so that's where we're all headed, is to recognizing it and remembering our unified truth as one individual, one divine being.
Many sparklers, one spark.
Yeah. Yes.
So we need to take a quick break and thank the New Thought Media Network for working with us to host this show, and ask for you to, click some like buttons, give us some feedback, ask us some questions, and overall, let us know you're there.
We hope you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
So
we'd also like you to support Darlene, by going to her website, which is scrolling across the bottom of your screen. We're so pleased to have her with us as a guest today, but we want you to check out her resources, find out about her books and her upcoming book, and so look at that website there and make a note of it and check out her website. Barb.
Thank you.
So all this, I was thinking about the 4 stages of consciousness that we've been teaching within New Thought for a long time, starting with in control, by me, through, as me, through me. Now I'm losing one of them. But anyway.
Well, to me, by me.
Right. That's the victim stage. I forgot the victim stage.
Yes.
I'd like to forget the victim stage. We all go there sometimes, because that's the thing. Like we can describe this in this 4 boxes, right? Which is always how it's drawn in pictures, but we can describe it in these 4 boxes, but we morph through all of it all the time. And, glimpses of the as me, right? But Darlene, when I looked at your books, I can see this interesting progression in how you write, where in the first book, it's like you were just writing down someone else's words. By the time you gave me a bit of the 4th book, as I'm reading the 4th book, it is definitely as you. Like you're getting this information seems to have landed within you, and this thought, this love speaks, has landed in you in a way that and my experience of you and talking with you extensively while we were in Washington is that you speak this now without like looking to the left or the right and looking for an answer. Like it seems to move in you now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel accurate? I'm curious about that progression.
It is absolutely accurate. And I am living this, and I am astounded. I'm amazed. But you know what? This shift in consciousness is available. And you're right, the perspective changes. But what I'm wanting to do is like my gift is being able to translate light and frequency and hear things like beyond, right? That's one of my gifts. And I have honed that over decades. But this capacity, once you begin to question, who am I? Then you begin to get answers. And it's a shift from external referencing to internal referencing. The very first day that I connected with the Council of Light, with the Ascended Masters, what they said to me was, my voice, your voice, our voice, one voice. And what I didn't realize until like only a number of months ago, that's the progression of consciousness. And that is exactly what I experienced. And that was the progression that you noticed. Initially I'm taking notes as a scribe. And then what happens in book 2 is that there's an integration, because I'm a student of the Ascended Masters here. There's an integration. So is the reader, by the way, if they choose to. There's an integration of my own divine light into my own awareness as the density and of past and of beliefs and of trauma and everything else were gradually, for me, I lay them upon the sacred altar. And the density and the history causes a resistance to the natural divine essence that we are. Our humanity causes a weight, or I think the imagery that is really beneficial is like if you consider that being in a hot air balloon, in order to have elevation from the hot air balloon, you must release the ballast. And as you release the ballast in whatever it is, however that shows up, and because we have a human form, I mean, it goes on because that's a part of the human experience, right? But you gradually get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And what happens is that from these more elevated states, context shifts dramatically. And then what happens is that the connection and the context of everything becomes undeniable. Undeniable, like standing on the top of a 75 floor building. You look out and you see how everything is connected. It is the exact same thing as the ballast and the density of being human, the painful parts and the beliefs. We begin to soften those edges, and it naturally creates this awareness of the connection of everything. And that is what you pick up is in my own process of releasing a lot of my own density over the years, is this perspective of, and my voice changes from them to me to we. And the distinction narrows because we are one. And if I think about it too much, let me tell you what, it's astounding to experience. But it happens to be the truth. And it begins with, it's a shift from external referencing, which is separation. So where in my life am I looking outside of me for value, for assurance, for safety, for wisdom? And now it's this turning of internal referencing, connecting with my own I am self, which is connected with the one, the oneness of everything and everyone. It's a fascinating progression, and it's a real thing.
Darlene, you might want to speak to a moment too about, because my experience is that the inner sense, it's an important progression because we're so informed from birth to look outward at life and to tell the story of our life by the outward experiences and myself as moving through it. And that whole progression of life is done to me because I'm this individual. And eventually we find, I can take control of my life. And then eventually as we move up the progression, we move into the states of recognizing that, the divine is within me, and that ultimately everything that is that divides me from God is melts away into a sense of life being done as me, as the divine. So, but there is a part in at least in my experience and experience when I've talked with others, that we have to move inward. But once we move totally with inward and get it, it also has a part of it that calls us back outward, where it calls us to be of service, to be of love, to be a bridge, to a conduit for the planet, for those who are still living through divisive experiences, to recognize their truth. So there's an opening in the heart of compassion for someone who moves inward. It's not totally, it's important to take the step to release the world, to go in and to know your divinity. But it's equally important not to stop there and to come back outward with that sense of love for every other expression, knowing your unity with them and wanting those other pockets of consciousness to recognize their truth and love and divinity as well. Would you not agree? And
I would agree with you because that's exactly what happened to me. I'm an introvert. I'm happy being at home. I'm happy just being here. Like, just don't make me talk to anybody. I'm happy. However, what happened was that the divine said, that's not you. The natural expression of love is being of service. Mm-hmm. The natural expression of love is connection. It must be. So I had to face my own concerns, my own fears, my safety, my perception of judgment or whatever else. And I'm following my inner voice. And I'm following that. Because it says, get out there. That is how I've been on my own journey for so long. And I hadn't been to CSL for a number of years. I've done a lot of the classes, but I've been doing my work here. And then 3 years ago, I get up on a Sunday morning and I hear, you're going to go to CSL today. Alrighty then. And what happened, I happened to be just in time for the Sunday service, amazingly. What happened is that I went there to be able to be of service. Had no idea what that meant. No idea. And I have experienced such extraordinary gifts, an extraordinary community that is there that has allowed me to be able to be of service. And it's the gift for me to be able to grow. So when you say that love is not solitary, love is not lived in separation. Love is lived in community, collaboration, communication, connection. Because the essence of love is oneness. And there's this real living into it. So it'll be fascinating to see how, for example, new thought moves into this new paradigm as well. And because it must move, because all boundaries and edges and definitions are up for transformation right now.
It's interesting you would say that, because a lot of our programs and episodes have dwelt on the future of New Thought, the future of communities, where New Thought is going. And even when that wasn't our topic, we've sometimes have wandered into it, no matter what topic we were discussing. And I think in every one of them, Barb, I want to bring you in on this, because I'll get your perspective, but it really is the sense that we feel that there is the shift going, not only a shift in the planet, but a shift in New Thought as a tool for the planet to step up to letting go of material goals for New Thought's tools, to seeing spiritual, mystical goals, a remembrance of our truth of oneness, and opening us to the bridge of love. And I think every week we sort of get into love. I'm reminded of Teilhard de Chardin's quote about that when we discover love again, it'll be like discovering fire for the second time, because he described it as an evolutionary force. What we see as this sort of romantic or emotional love is really an aspect of the divine that is used as a tool to move us in our consciousness from separation to unity. That love is always moving us from thinking that we're apart to connecting us. So Barb, your take on this?
Well, in a more nuts and bolts way,
Nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts. I would say, this leans into the conversations that we've had about the shift from the importance of this idea that we're teaching anybody anything to this space of community where we experience these things that we've been learning and embodying. Because it would be so fun and easy to be the guru on the hill in my own condo. I'm with you. I could just stay here and la my oneness, right? It is taking it into community and getting our edges rubbed off and getting back into our humanity because someone's irritating, or all those things that actually have us not think about unity, but experience and express it. Because we cannot experience and express it alone. That's me and my cat, we do a good job, but she doesn't push any of my buttons, right? And so if we're really going to embody and live these things, we have to find our buttons and release them. That's part of the ballast, probably. It's a great metaphor, like letting go of these little things that we think that have to line up perfectly for us to be with other people. And really, I feel like that particularly in the United States, that we're just desperate for community right now. But we have to be willing to be in it, be as us in our humanity and in our spirit and in our complete wholeness together. But the thing about coming into it and showing up in community from that place of wholeness is that people aren't so irritating anymore. And all those things, right? We become a more loving presence, and then we get more loving presence back. And all of that is a circle that will actually be part of this expansion of changing the world. Because we just, New Thought, we don't have anything new. We are not new. We are not unique anymore. If we ever were, we were, but we are not. We're in everything. And I'm on my soapbox, I'm afraid. Sorry. Um, you knew that. This is one of my soapboxes, right? We're just not different anymore. But what we offer is a different space of connection if we can be in it in that way.
And I think that that is of huge value. There's two things that have come to me. One of them has to do with a picture that I'm getting right now around the definitions that we have held on to for so long, and they were shown to me as all defined systems are like sand castles built on the water's edge at an incoming tide. They may no longer stand. They may no longer stand. So now what? When you can't look back behind you and create a new life, what do you do? And you see, this is where I think that we are at. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Humanity does not like, do not test me. Don't make me uncomfortable. It's kind of like wearing a mohair sweater, in Arizona in summer. I mean, it's awful. Like that picture?
You guys, between the slugs and now being hot and itchy, it's like I'm going to have to go take another shower after this show.
I know. But humanity does not like to be uncomfortable, but we are tested right now. And this is where the doubling down happens with those that are not in the space of saying, I have to look somewhere else now. There's this, I'm clinging on to the raft, or actually another imagery, I get images. And the other imagery that came to me was like, the dock is on fire. You can either get in the boat or send out to Home Depot and get more lumber. But the dock is on fire. This is an evolutionary shift of a huge magnitude. And it's asking each one of us to begin to look somewhere else. And so when you talk about, like the edges, like the definitions, allowing, having an allowance, being able to be fluid. How do we live now in a fluid environment? That really is like the next capacity to be developed, and having compassion for the pain that many are going through that are choosing something else. They're going against the flow. And then, I could go into cosmic consciousness, but that really, I guess I will just really quick. Cosmic consciousness is an energetic that is on the planet that supports this generation into our next movement of wholeness. We are not doing this movement of the new paradigm all by ourselves. There is support, and it's a natural movement, meaning we have everything we need. And there is this other frequency on the planet, this cosmic consciousness that has this generative frequency to it that is the next iteration of us. So we are like that in that chrysalis place where we are no longer the caterpillar, and yet we are not quite the butterfly either. But we are in this gooey, gummy, sluggy kind of place, Mark, right? We're in that sluggy space.
That's right. I love it.
Right?
But we have to go through the void and the gooey space as a necessary step for that next birthing of the butterfly.
When we have everything we need.
Yes, and that I think is where the value of community comes back in, because we are having this physical experience, and then we can go someplace where we have a physical experience of support and love and acceptance in our goo. I mean, it's hard to be in the world gooey a lot, yeah. Right? But if we can find places, I know, right? This is
it's the gooey episode.
It's the gooey episode,
right?
But if we can find spaces in our life where we can go and be as ourselves in our wholeness without feeling like a weirdo for a few minutes. I'm not saying like hide it from the rest of the world, be it all the time, but it's a relief to be somewhere sometimes where people see us that way and know us for that and know us that way, and and we all love each other in that, you know.
And it's a very creative space too.
Yeah.
This space, when we're no longer looking behind us to the template of the way that life has been, we begin to look somewhere else, and we find that beautiful community that is around us. It's like, bring who you are. You bring all of you here. All of you is welcome here. All of humanity is going through this process, and we're going to support each other in this process. And by the way, bring your soul's voice along with you.
Great reminder. Great reminder. Darlene, I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to thank you for joining us today for this discussion. It's been very enlightening and very fun and very enjoyable. And I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully all of our listeners check out your website and your books and content. And Barb, why don't you bring us home?
Yeah. So thank you for listening. Darlene, thank you. Like, I adore you. When is your book launch? When's book 4 going to launch? Is it soon?
Yeah, book 4 is in typesetting right now, so I'm thinking it's going to be within a month is my guess. But
Okay.
we'll wait and see. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be in conversation with you. I think that these are valuable conversations. And again, when we get to be able to bring our minds and our hearts together, I think that we create a beautiful space of growth. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was magical. So thank you all for listening. Please, again, drop us a note. Let us know what you'd like to hear us take on, or support the New Thought Media Network. Please, if you support it through the QR code that came up at the break, they know that you've been listening to this show and enjoying this program. So appreciate you all for being here, and we will see you next week.